So what you're gonna need today, bare minimum, some beans or some ground coffee. We'll just say coffee. I'm not like a GCSE science teacher. It's like grabbing the things out of there through a process we call diffusion. And today we're gonna be talking about brewing techniques. We're gonna talk about French press, AeroPress, mocha pot, and V60. We're gonna cover a bunch of stuff like grind size, extraction, how much water you should use, how I actually make my coffee at home on the weekends. And yeah, I'm just gonna make a bunch of coffees for you. About it. Zing. Bare minimum, what you're gonna need today, some coffee. Everything else is a bonus, but we'll start with that. So a lot of what we're doing today is about extraction. What we do when we make coffee is essentially we're extracting tasty things from our grounds into our final cup. If you extract 100% of everything, it's gonna taste pretty bad. Also, if you extract like 1%, it's gonna taste really bad. And between 18 and 21 is the sweet spot. I'm gonna try and show you how to hit that sweet spot. So with our grind size, we've basically got coarse grind, i.e. massive pieces of coffee, or fine grind, i.e. tiny pieces of coffee. The fine grind, there's a larger surface area, there's more little points where we can extract things from, and that means that you can easily over-extract if the grind is too fine. Just like you can under-extract if the grind is too coarse and there's not enough area for the water to absorb things from. Okay, the first brew method we're going to talk about is the French press, le presse français. That's a terrible joke. This is a classic. It's really easy. All I'd say is it's really important to be patient with this. We're just gonna let it sit for basically as long as we can wait. At least 5 minutes recommended, ideally more like 8. And that way we're gonna get a good level of extraction. Okay, let's go. So we're gonna put 16 grams of ground coffee. And if you don't have scales, that's about 2 tablespoons. And then we're gonna pour something like 40 grams of water on. And just gonna give it a little stir. And then at 30 seconds, I'm gonna pour the rest of the water on until we're up to 240. I always give it a little stir at this point. Put the lid on, and then we wait for an annoyingly long amount of time. We need it for the extraction. Okay, so we were just talking about whether you need to plunge this or not. It basically doesn't matter. All we need to do is pour the water through the filter so we don't get a bunch of grounds and things that get stuck in our teeth when we're drinking the coffee. A classic, the French press. Now we're going to talk about the AeroPress. Best thing about the AeroPress is that it was invented by a guy who also invented the aerobie frisbee. And that's just cool. Designed as a way of kind of bridging the gap, I guess, between espresso and filter. Because of the way, when you finish off the brew, you press it, that provides more than the usual atmospheric gravitational pressure that you get with other pour-over methods. So it allows you to get a bit more thickness in your brews, but it also ends up making them a little less kind of clear, a little less clean tasting. But it's a really fun way of making coffee. Also, you can make it in loads of different ways with these. So you can like geek out a little bit, change up your grind size, change up the temperature of the water, how much coffee you're using, and get like really different tasting coffees. We're actually going to use these rather ungainly little tools that come with the AeroPress. We're going to do it without scales. I believe this does about 16 grams. We're going to fill it up. I'm going to use my phone as a timer for this one. There's some numbers on the side here. I actually never knew what those were for, and I should have probably looked into it before we filmed this. You know what, I don't use them anyway. The 250 grams of water on top. As I do in my other ways of making coffee, I start with a little bit of water, wait for 15 seconds, give it a stir, and wait another like 5-10 seconds, fill it up to the top. This way of making the AeroPress is called the inverted method. It's upside down. This way, I think, is the best way to make it. We're going to get our filter paper and a little basket that goes in. Again, we're just going to wet this to remove any kind of papery taste that it has. So then we put our little basket with our filter paper on top, and that's all now ready to go. So now we're just going to wait until 2 minutes. And now here's where we have to be a little bit like on our game. We're going to put this like this, and then we're going to flip the whole thing upside down and give it a little swirl just in case any ground coffee is stuck to this top bit. And then we're going to push down. And there it is. The mocha pot. A lot of people in specialty coffee don't love these. There's a few reasons why. The way it works is coffee boils and bubbles up through the ground coffee and into this top chamber here. Therefore, the coffee that's contacting the grounds is a little bit officially too hot. It's probably, yeah, it's basically boiling up, so it has to be about 100 degrees. However, I think these can taste great, and a lot of people use these for real dark roast, traditional kind of Italian style things, but I don't think they need to be limited to that. I think you can make really, really good coffee from these. And I also just think they're so iconic that they shouldn't be ignored. So I'm gonna make how I make it at home, which is generally if I'm trying to make something kind of in between an espresso and a filter. So something a bit sweeter, something with maybe heavier body than I might make with, let's say, a V60. We're gonna start by filling up the bottom section with water up to about the line of where this little steam spout is. I'm filling it with hot water, just because that way, as it's heating up, it doesn't take as long to heat up, and therefore there's not all this steam going through the grounds, which maybe is not a good thing. So I'm gonna fill up water up to this little spout line and put this on top, put my grounds on there. Let's just kind of pat this down a little bit. And my Italian friend said that in Italy, they always do these little 3 notches in the middle. I just kind of like it. I'm sure it doesn't have any function. I don't know, I just kind of enjoy it. The bottom section is pretty hot. I've been a barista for so long that I can't feel pain in my hands anymore, but use a tea towel if you want to be a bit more safe with the heat of this. And now we're going to put this on the hob and basically wait for our water to bubble up through the top here, then we'll have our coffee. There's never quite enough water in there to make the right ratio of water to coffee. So I always dilute with a little bit of cold water afterwards. And that seems to just open it up. And I don't know, when I first did that, I was like, wow, this is how you should make mocha pots every time. V60, here it is. It's a little ceramic or sometimes plastic cone. This is also what a lot of people will call pour over. There's a lot of different kinds of pour over methods, but this is my favorite one. This is actually how I make my coffee at home on the weekends. Yeah, I just find it like quite easy to make these really reliably well, even if you don't have like a bunch of fancy water, and I don't know, if everything's not perfect, you can still get a really good coffee out of this. So this one, we also need some filters. A paper filter that we put in here. And then the next thing we need to do is pour some water through it. That removes the papery taste that the filter can have. This also is quite nice. It like warms up the glass underneath if you're using glass, or if you've got a cup under there. This is going to be really similar to our French press recipe in that we're going to use 16 grams of coffee again, and about 250 or 240 grams of water on top. So I'm using our Editions coffee right now. It's a really tasty Kenyan. Yeah, this brew method is a really good way of getting brightness, clean, like delicate flavors, the fancy flavors from coffee. And then I'm just gonna pour what's called a bloom. About 40 grams of water. And then once that's had a little bit of time to bloom up, you can actually see the grounds kind of puff up a little bit as the carbon dioxide leaves. And this little stir makes sure that every bit of this coffee bed in here has water attached or kind of contacting it. And then we're going to pour the rest of our water on top. I like to go around in clockwise circles just because it feels kind of fancy. I think you could just pour it in the middle. I don't think it will make a huge difference. So we're going to pour up to 250 grams of water. Pour on top like that. Give it a little stir. And then wait until it all comes through. It shouldn't be too under or over extracted, and it should be a nicely balanced cup. This Kenyan tastes really fruity. It's quite blackcurranty and orangey and licoricey and caramelly, and I think it's gonna work really well as a V60. We'll come through now. Look at this, it's so clean. I love the color of V60 brews. There's something so pure about them. This is what I drink on a Saturday morning if I have any caffeine space left after my week, which probably involved tasting way too much coffee. Phil, definitely yes, if you can. We love using pre-ground coffee. It's super easy, it's much quicker, but when coffee is freshly ground, it just has so much more aroma, so much more intensity of flavor. All those chocolatey things or those fruity things that you bought it for are going to be more intense when it's freshly ground. Be better at home. There's obviously a million things you could do, but if I could pick one, it is start using better water. More filtered water means it's got more space to extract more delicious things from the coffee. We do a bunch of compostable pods, which are really great, really easy to use. But if you're getting into bean and ground stuff, I recommend just buy a French press, get some ground coffee, follow the simple instructions that we talked about earlier, and you can't really go wrong. You don't need to keep your coffee in the fridge. There's never enough space in the fridge. You can just keep it in a cool, dry place, ideally with a sealed lid, for example, in one of our cans. It's going to keep just as fresh there as in the fridge. This was episode 2 of Grind Coffee Labs. I hope you learned a little bit about how to make coffee, and I hope you're going to make coffee at home a little bit better than you did before. And yeah, if you have more questions, I'd love to hear from you. Hit us up on the comments here or on my Instagram, Coffee with Howey. Just talk to me about coffee. I talk about coffee all the time. I love it.